Pizza delivery drivers of Reddit. What was the most messed up place you ever stopped at? I once delivered to a guy living under his porch, if that counts. I drove up to the house. It's pitch black, no lights on. I look at the ticket and it says, use back door. I go up the steps and no lights on. Nothing. Then I hear a voice from below me say, psst, hey, down here. I look under the porch and there's a small door leading into what looked like a makeshift apartment. I had to actually crouch to get to it, gave the guy the pizza, and bounced the F out of there. I think that might have been the Ninja Turtles. Story 2. I didn't end up delivering the pizza, but the address was an abandoned house. It was around dusk and the house was so obviously uninhabited. I could see trees growing through the windows and the back side of the house was crumbling so badly I could see to the backyard from the street. The instructions were to come around back. I double-checked the address after locking my doors. Called the customer a couple of times, called the store and told him what was up and why I wasn't delivering the pizza and headed out. I mean, seriously, who would have been dumb enough to go to the back of that house? Story 3. I don't know if this counts as effed up, but it always makes me laugh when I think back to it. I delivered pizza to a house where an older guy walks out in a robe, sorta mumbling. I hand him the food, he hands me a 20. I tell him it's 24. He mumbles okay and waddles back into the house and comes back and hands me another 20. I go to my pocket to get change and he slams the door on me. I also once delivered to an older woman who tells me to come in the side door. The food is about $34 and she hands me what I think is $40 and is really sweet, asking me how I'm doing and all that. I get back into my car and realize it's actually $60 and 2 of the 20s were sort of stuck together. I go back into her house to let her know and she says, "Oh, I know. It's for gas and whatever else you might need." I always remember that lady because it was such a random nice thing to do and it really made my day. Story 4. I was delivering chicken, KFC, not pizza, but my worst stop was pathetic. Really. I knock on the door. I hear a kid yell, "I got it!" He opens the door and runs up the stairs yelling to his friends, "The chicken a-hole's here! The chicken a-hole's here!" After which a crowd of about 8 preteens at the top of the stairs start throwing change down the stairs at me to pay for the delivery. I asked if they could hand me the money. They laugh and just throw the quarters, dimes, etc. harder. So I picked up the bag of food, winged it up the stairs at him, it hit the wall, and I split. Told the boss what happened, and if they call to complain, I won't listen or apologize. I'll just quit if he brings it up. I found out later he did get a call and told them to get stuffed. Good boss. Story 5. Apparently this needs to be said at the beginning. I'm a girl. I was a delivery driver and was working a morning shift. Around 10:30 a.m. I got a delivery to an apartment. Everything seems legit since it's daytime and there are lots of people close by. I knocked on the door and after 30 seconds or so the door opened a few inches and the guy was behind the door so I only saw his face. Still didn't think it was weird because people do that when they're trying to restrain a dog. He asked me to put the pizza on the stove behind him and he moved back so I could see it was right behind him. I hesitated a second and decided not to do it. Told him I can't enter homes, but I don't mind waiting until he's ready to take the pizza. He asked again, said, "It's right there." So I gave the same answer. Really apologetic, but something wasn't feeling right. I realized later it was how quiet it was. Didn't sound like there was an excited dog back there. So he opened the door wide open and was completely naked. And this guy was at least 60 years old and like 6 feet tall. I tried to hand him the pizza and gave him the total, averting my eyes the whole time. He wouldn't give me the money. He kept asking me to repeat the total and moved into my line of vision. I just took a step back and looked straight up. Eventually, he gave me $25 and I got the frick out of there. Told everyone at the store, and for an $8 tip and a chance to deck the guy, all the boys that worked there hoped he would order again. The next day, he did. When the driver got back, he said he had to wait at least 2 minutes, and when the guy answered, he was only wearing sweatpants. So he was sure he would do it again to a girl driver. So the guy got blacklisted. Ooh, that's very creepy. The fact that he was so adamant about you coming inside. I used to deliver food as well, and that is a thing. People, mostly guys, will answer the door straight up butt naked. But I've never been invited to go in. So good for me, sorry for you, and glad you're okay. Story 6. One night I have a delivery to a pretty rural area. A lot of my deliveries are to rural areas, so no big deal. But tonight it's drizzling and especially dark. so I'm having trouble finding the address of the house I'm looking for. So I roll down the passenger window and use my really effing bright flashlight, pointing it at all the mailboxes, trees, posts, anything that somebody might have their address on at the end of their driveway. So I'm driving along at like 5 miles an hour, pointing my flashlight when the beam catches a guy wearing a black hoodie at the end of an obviously long gravel road staring directly at me. More of a glare at me, really. But whatever, could just be on the phone or something. Then it gets weirder. I finally find the address I'm looking for and pull into the drive and hop out of the car. That's when I get the sinking feeling. No cars, no house light, boarded up windows. If you've ever been a delivery person, you know that this is the time to get the heck out of there because you're about to get robbed. Right as I'm about to jump in, throw the car into reverse, and nope the F out of there, I see a man walking across the empty field adjacent to the property towards me. F. Now, I'm a pretty burly, bearded dude, so I don't worry a whole lot on deliveries, but this scared the crap out of me. When he gets closer, I see him very obviously tucking something into his waistband, what I can only assume was a gun. He then says in a thick, menacing southern accent, "I thought you was the law." I guess because of how I was scanning the addresses? I meekly point to my car topper and the pizza in my hand, and he says in the nicest voice you've ever heard, "Oh, great. Thank you so much. Have a great night." Pays me and proceeds to walk back through the open field in the direction of no buildings in the rain with his pizza. For the rest of my shift, I couldn't stop whispering, "What the F?" Strangest thing that's ever happened to me. See, that would be absolutely terrifying. I guess just goes to show, this guy might be on the run or whatever, but even criminals get hungry, okay? We all like Papa John's. Story 7. I delivered subs. But one of our regular clients was an old lady in a nursing home who thought it was 1940s or something. She was super nice, but nobody would deliver to her because she would only tip you like 25 cents because, again, she was living way in the past. But I loved to sit and talk with her, so I always volunteered to do it. The nurses would pay the tip if they saw me, but usually I only got a quarter. Her delusional state was heartbreaking. She was, for the most part, lucid, aside from not realizing what year it was. She'd give me hair and makeup tips, loved to talk about men, and always told me stories about her husband, but seemed unsure of where he was because she never mentioned him dying or if he visits. Editing, for those who seem to be convinced that either me or her is lying. She didn't pay for the food. She obviously had dementia. The nurses called the order in, we had the card info, and we sent the order. If the delivery person didn't run into a nurse or find one to let them know the delivery was made, we didn't get a tip. She wasn't scamming us out of our tip, she was mentally unsound. The nurses even warned me upon meeting her that she will probably think she's way back in time and to find them for the tip. Usually I didn't run into them, and I felt bad hunting one down to ask for money when the old lady thought she had already tipped me. I don't know what kind of world you live in, but in the real one, not everyone is out to get you. Story 8. GPS led me to my city's hospital. After getting directions from a lot of employees, I finally found the room. I'll admit now I really should have paid more attention to the signs, but was in a rush and didn't bother. Luckily, there was a nurse already in this lady's room. I was just going to walk in and drop the food off when the nurse starts shaking her hands and rushes me. No, you can't come in here. This is isolation. Oh, I'm so sorry. She ordered a delivery. She went back in the room and asked the lady if she ordered a delivery, and I heard the lady say yes. I overheard the nurse tell her, "You should have told me." Nurse comes back to me and grabbed the food and told me if I'd walked in the room, I was not to be let back out or something along those lines. Threw me for a loop. I will pay more attention now, though. I promise. Yeah, the hospital orders are arguably one of the worst ones. And I get everybody has somewhere to be. They've all got jobs to do. But I feel like there should be some sort of system in place where I just drop it at the front desk. Somebody takes it up instead of me being, "Oh, yeah, I have an order for Kathy." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, for sure. Just floor 7, room 91, doors on the left." Okay, thanks. I've got way too many stories about walking into hospital rooms I had no business being in. Story 9. Extremely large man naked on his bed telling me to come in. I yelled that I wouldn't like to do that, and he replied, "Oh, it's a girl. Why'd they send a girl?" As if we knew the situation there. Delivered to a trucker in his rig. Berated me for having a single nose piercing and colored hair because he had a son with all them piercings, and all he does is drugs now. Then the man texted me, "Can I ask you a silly question?" I had called him to find his specific rig for the delivery. I ignored and blocked him, and he called the store asking for me specifically to return and bring him a specific sauce packet. My manager said no and had to stay in the store with the crew until it was time to leave. One woman answered the the door in a thong and asked where another delivery driver was. Told her he wasn't working. She replied, "Well, he knows to always do mine for me." Again tried to explain that he was not present in the store that day. Later found out he was dealing while delivering. Probably many more. Pizza delivery is a rite of passage in my opinion. Story 10. So while I was an undergrad, I worked as a pizza delivery driver. I had a delivery to a dodgy part of town with a delicious pie. When I got within a couple of miles of the residence, a local sheriff's deputy got in front of me. We made all the same turns. Then as we got closer, another got in front of him and one behind me. I start freaking out a bit as I'd been smoking some weed, but carry on. Finally, we all get to the same residence, which is totally surrounded by police in riot gear, guns, drawn, all that crap. I get out with my pizza and discover the house I'm supposed to deliver to is the one with SWAT out in front. One of the officers waves me off and says, "He's not going to need that today." And they proceed to breach the door, to which I return to the car with a free pizza and get the heck out of there. They were added to our do not deliver list, but I don't think we ever heard from them again. Story 11. First time to a huge mansion that was renowned for big tips, where you had to go around the back to a gate leading to the pool patio. Guy who answered the gate doorbell had been disfigured in some horrible accident. He had me wait while he got his wallet. So I got a good dose of the backyard where a raging party was going on. Some stuff being snorted, craziness in the pool, booze bottles everywhere. It was like a midday on a Wednesday. Guy finally comes back, addresses me by name, no name tag, and says, "You don't remember me, do you?" Knowing that I'd remember those injuries, I realized he must know me from before he got hurt, and I stammered out a weak, "No, I don't." His response blew me away. He recalled being in the first grade with me at a local Catholic school I attended for 1 year. Then he went on to detail everything about class that year, the people, teachers, activities, and that this accident had happened during the following summer. He'd gone through a windshield in a head-on with a semi. I delivered there a few more times and hung out chatting with him as long as I could. It slowly became clear that the party crowd was just using him for his money. That was effed up enough, but what I also eventually realized was that he was stuck in that last normal year he'd lived in. 20 years later, had moved back. He'd moved away because his parents died or were severely injured in the accident. As soon as he was old enough to access the accident settlement, and the money was going up that crowd's nose pretty fast. I had no idea how to help him or even if he wanted help, and eventually started letting other drivers take that run. Never saw him again, even though it's a small town. Eventually, he stopped ordering pizza, and then I left for a job elsewhere, but would pass by his house when visiting while my parents still lived there. Fewer and fewer cars were parked out front every time I went by, and the house slowly became overgrown with ivy. Effed up. Story 12. Drove for a bit when things were rough. Day driving on weekdays meant there were only 2 of us, and we got mostly the business park lunches and the stay-at-home pool parties, and the latchkey kids after school snacks. There was some interesting stuff we ran into. Brothels ran out of apartments, drug dens out of high-end hotels, but for the most part it was seniors answering the door in boxes or tossing flyers on doors or dealing with snotty brats. There was this one house, though, that made my heart stop every time it came up, which was thankfully rare. Call it instinct or energy or whatever, I hated that house. And because there was only 2 of us, and I was 20 years younger than the other guy, it was usually me. It was the only house on a single-lane road. To give you an idea of the distance here, the major road this little road was off of housed a new McMansion development within 1 mile, and a sleepy little 1950s-style cookie-cutter suburbia development a mile in the other direction. It'd be real easy to mistake this road for an access road, especially with how heavily overgrown that area had become. Once you got on this little road, the first 20 feet or so seemed absolutely normal. It's after you turned the bend and the road turned to gravel that things went bat crap. We're talking the road lined with construction worker and Smokey the Bear cutouts wrapped in barbed wire and holding model rifles, naked store mannequins covered in paintball splatter with BB guns tied to their hands and pointed at the road, signs every 5 or 10 feet, no trespassing, private property, CCTV recording in progress, you are being watched. No crap, Sherlock, you aren't hiding the cameras. This continued for the next mile while I wondered if I should be calling my fiancé and telling him I loved him, grateful that it was bright and sunny out. So I get to the gate and call the customer, which was the most normal part of this. Tell him I'm outside, only to be told to not approach the house under any circumstance and do not leave the vicinity of my car. I'm like, okay, dude, you know what? I'm intimidated. I'm a 24-year-old woman in a mile into the woods at some psycho's house with crap reception on my phone just trying to deliver a pizza. So I get out of my car, take out the pizza bag, and lean against the side of my car and hope that I'm not making the nightly news. Out walks a guy who, I crap you not, is dressed like he walked off of the Men in Black film set, takes his pizza and wings, tips me $5, and instructs me how to turn my car around. Would rather take the strippers 100 times over that house. Story 13. I have two. We had a regular that was saved in the computer as Mike from around the corner. Whenever I delivered, he was super effed up. On more than one occasion, I had to let myself in because he was playing his drum set with his headphones on or completely effed up on booze or drugs. One time he was passed out and drooling on the coffee table. Called the cops, but he was okay. I saw him a year later at his day job and he didn't even know who I was. Was never sober when we delivered. The other one was a Nazi house in Huntington Beach. Big 4-bedroom and the place was always crawling with white supremacists. Always answered the door without shirts and displaying tattoos. Always a style. They wouldn't tip unless you were white. Story 14. A few years ago, I delivered to a house where the whole family was out front when I arrived. There was also a husky puppy who got into something in the grass. The wife's response was to shake and cuss at it. I put on a joking voice and said, "Hey, you can't shake it out of the pup." And the husband did some flex on me by saying, "Thanks, you deliver pizzas," and stiffed me. I didn't tell anyone at work, and that night around 2 a.m. I went back to the neighborhood, parked a little block away by a patch of woods and to their backyard fence. Like I was thinking it was left out back overnight and this pup is just a couple of months old. So I slipped through a gap because I can literally slide through any space as wide as my head, unhooked the puppy now waiting at the end of this tether in the yard and got the F out silently. I gave the puppy to a friend because she and her husband are unbelievably good people and he's been such an amazing dog. His name is Chico. The family either didn't care or thought the pup got loose or something because I never heard from them at the store. Maybe it was wrong of me, but I couldn't get the memory of her shaking and yelling at that pup. And I guess the story of my parents told us that when they rescue stole a dog, put it all together. Okay, well, we don't have their, the visuals that they have, but I hope that this dog was actually, I don't hope, but I hope the dog was actually being mistreated and these people weren't just, scolding their dog normally and then letting the dog out at 2 a.m. because he's a puppy and has to pee often, and then all of a sudden they order Domino's and their dog's gone in the morning. My point is, if you're going to steal a dog, right? Not that we should be doing a lot of it, but if you are going to steal a dog, make sure that it's being mistreated and you're truly rescuing it. Story 15. Drove for Domino's in college and had to deliver to a house in a bad part of town. There were no lights on at all outside and the grass looked like it hadn't been cut in months. I have to use my phone flashlight to find my way to the door. I knock and this elderly woman answers wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt. She had one eye that was good and one that was completely glazed over. She never said a word and kept eye contact with me the entire time that she fumbled through her wallet to give me the exact change. Ugh. Meanwhile, inside there was a very large man and a little kid. They were both only wearing boxers, and the kid kept trying to run up and help the woman with sodas and pizza, and the guy kept yelling to sit his butt down. All the while, this woman is silent and staring into my soul. I wish I could say it was a one-time deal, but no. I delivered there a few more times after that, and it was the exact same drill every time. Just felt like something from the Twilight Zone. Edit. About the whole calling CPS issue, it honestly didn't cross my mind because all I saw is what I stated. Neither the woman nor the child had any sort of bruises, cuts, or markings to show there was physical abuse. The woman's eye seemed like it had been that way for a while, and it didn't strike me as a possible abuse injury at the time. I was an exhausted college student working the closing shift, and I was just trying to get in and get out so I could make some more deliveries. The comments here did open my eyes to look more carefully at situations like this and to learn more about the CPS. Thanks, everyone. Story 16. At the mouth of Provo Canyon, on the way down to the Sundance in Heber City, Utah, there was a compound that housed a school for teenagers who rebelled. We're talking kids that screwed up and their Mormon parents sent them from all over the country to this hard-nosed place to fix them. I'd have to deliver there about once a month. Parents would feel guilty and send their kid a pizza, paid for with a credit card. The kids, hating their parents, would often put like a $50 tip onto a $15 pizza. This was from 97 to 2002 when I worked there. After a while, the store manager made it a rule that any tip had to be okayed by the parents placing the order, because he'd gotten too many irate parents about their kids' smart butt tip amounts. Anyhow, you had to get buzzed into the main room through this set of double security doors. The guys that worked there were all like 6'2" and 250 pounds and ripped. One time I go in with like 10 pizzas for the entire group, and one of the guys says, "All of you get back away from the door." He looks at me and tells me to move toward the door. The hair on the back of my neck stands up. All of a sudden, like 3 of the kids attack this dude, and they screwed up. This dude was some kind of Chuck Norris prodigy. They took swings at him with objects from the room like chairs, and he just blocked them with his arms until he could punch back, and he dropped all 3 of them with shots to the chest, hitting them so hard that they couldn't breathe anymore. I stood there and blinked while he restored calm, telling them, "We didn't need this, guys. And I don't like doing this, but you attacked me. I'm here to help you, but if you use violence to get what you want, you'll have a very tough time here. I'm choosing not to call the police over this." I got out of there as fast as I could. Anyway, the place was effed up because of the violence and the whole concept of private jails for kids. Story 17. Funnest job I ever had, but man, the crap I saw and went through. The most effed up delivery had to be when a woman answered with her huge, beautiful Siamese cat. I love that breed, so I ask if I can pet him. She says yes. I bend down. The cat purrs, rubs against me, all the usual signs of liking it. So I stand up to finish giving this lady her pizza. The cat lunges and bites me above my right eye and wraps all 4 limbs around my head. Panic. Freeze. What the frick do I do? What the frick is going on? Why isn't this lady helping me? I grab this demon cat from hell by the front legs and just rip him the F off of me. As I do, my contact lens pops off. All I can think is that it's eye skin coming off of my eyeball. I throw that effer down and just freak out at the amount of blood that starts pouring out of my gash. The woman brings me into her house and puts a towel on. I tell her she has to take me to the emergency room or call 911 as I can't see to drive myself. After all, it was her cat who attacked me. She drives me to a minor ER place. I get stitches and a tetanus shot. She foots the bill, but never see her again. Boss wasn't happy that I missed the rest of the night, or had another order in my car. F that cat. Story 18. It was outside of town on a dirt road with tall trees. Every house was basically just plywood shacks. There were broken down cars and trash everywhere. The entire neighborhood just reeked of B-rated horror film. I find the right house and walk up to the door, but it was just a blanket. So I had to yell, "Pizza!" They come to the door and grumbled. It was a haggard-looking man wearing boxers and a dirty white tank. Something felt wrong as he handed me a bill that looked washed. He held the $100 with old Ben Franklin's face on it up to the light and could clearly see Abe Lincoln in the paper. They'd ordered around $50 worth of pizza and wanted change. He tried convincing me that he went to the bank and they gave him that bill. I asked him why then the wrong face was on there, and he said, "That's how they do it." I said, "Heck no, they don't," and drove away as fast as I could. We stopped taking orders that don't have street roads. Story 19. Made a delivery to a motel that was known for dealers and users staying there. After I get there, the guy acts like his order is wrong and gets me to call my boss because he was hoping to just get the order for free. While on the phone with my boss, she told me not to worry about getting the money from him and to just get out of there ASAP because she was worried about me. I told her I would be fine and she didn't need to worry, and I would see if I could get them to pay. So after talking to them for about 5 minutes, I actually get them to buy the food they ordered and give me a tip of 3 or 4 Klonopins, which I was really happy with. Also, the guy wanted me to sell some stuff for him, which I politely declined. The whole time I was talking to them, my boss was blowing up my phone, trying to get me away from them. It does mean a lot that she cared enough to do that. Story 20. I worked at Domino's, and we had to blacklist a guy because he was obsessed with me. He would come in and ask if I was there. If I wasn't working that day, he would just show up the next. If I was on a delivery, he'd wait around in the store for me. He would tell me that he loved me and ask me out on dates. He was very, very bad on some hard stuff and made it obvious. The last time I delivered to his house, he ordered about $40 worth of food and drinks and kept trying to hand me $100, even though I told him numerous times I didn't have the change. He apparently stole his grandma's cell phone and wouldn't give it back, and him and his cousin were screaming at each other the whole time I'm waiting to get the smaller bills he kept telling me he had. He had nothing smaller than $100. And he kept arguing with me because he changed his mind and just wanted 1 pizza and a drink, and I told him I couldn't do that. Story 21. I delivered a pizza in a slum during high school. There was a lot of effed up crap, but the ones that really bothered me were delivering to junkies that had multiple young children just living in filth. There was one particular junkie who was always barely conscious and had like 4 kids living in squalor and eating probably nothing but pizza and soda every day. Also, these junkies always had some craphead enabler, usually their parents, ordering the food for them. So it was a 50-50 on whether or not they answered the door or were otherwise aware of the delivery coming. Story 22. I was a pizza guy in the late 90s. At the time, I was a big pothead. I lived with my parents, so I usually kept my weed with me so they wouldn't find it. So I'm delivering one night with a ½ ounce in my pocket. It was triple bagged so no one would smell it. Pull up to this house, and as soon as I get out of the car, a German Shepherd in the backyard starts going nuts, barking, pawing at the fence. This dog didn't like me. I thought nothing of it, because it wasn't the first mean dog I'd encounter while delivering. Knock on the door, and a state trooper answers the door in his uniform. My heart immediately sinks, and I'm effing terrified. I realize that's not just any dog, that's a canine. But the cop just rolls his eyes, pays for his pizza, and I went on my way. I don't remember if he tipped. Story 23. A really classy hotel that's barely in our delivery radius. Had a total of 3 deliveries there. Went in and told the front desk I had a delivery. They sent me up without checking to see if anyone ordered. Went in and they called the room I was going to deliver to, but it was empty. They then called the guy's number. We printed on the delivery slip in case something happens. He answers, tells them that he didn't order any pizza, and even if he did, he's all the way in Chicago. This was happening in Texas. Still no idea how those events transpired. Got an order and was told to deliver to the hotel bar. I pull up and see the lady who ordered was standing at the front desk. The person working the desk was on the phone with my manager over which store was supposed to deliver there. Lady ended up getting her pizza free, and she tipped me $12. I have yet to go there since. Story 24. Delivered a pizza for a while in high school and college. Never anything too sketchy. Used to deliver all the time to a level 3 offender. I never felt too threatened as an 18-year-old, but the guy gave me the absolute creeps. He lived in a tiny condo, linoleum floors and cheap furniture like he had the same everything since the 70s. He would have me bring the pizza in and close the door behind me. There was a few seconds I'd be putting the pizza down with my back to him. It sounds rather mundane typing out, but I can't really think of another time being around another person and being so absolutely creeped out. I never knew the exact details of his crimes, but the implications was kids. It sounds wrong to say, but I feel like even if I wasn't told before the first delivery, I still would have come back to the shop and said that he probably has a kid's head in his freezer. Yeah, even as a dude, I never went into someone's house and closed the door behind me. That is way too sketchy. Story 25. I don't even know where to begin, to be honest. My all-time most weirdest favorite delivery, though, that I can think of right now, was finding a regular who was drunk late night playing golf on a golf course. Dude always tipped like a boss, so I had no problem playing the game with him. It wasn't hard to find. He was the only guy out there and was loud as a tank. I could understand how some other people might not have been as keen, as it was dark and out of the way. Story 26. Delivered pizza for about 2 months. I got an address I've never even heard of. It was beyond town and more up a hill. Never been here and my GPS ain't making sense. House on the right, but all I see is a mailbox and a big tree. I had to turn my car sideways off the road to high beam what was behind the tree. I see a small house. Pretty sure it was a 1-bedroom. Thought to myself, carrying too large, why would a tree be in front of the house? Anyways, I knocked on the door and a nice blonde lady opened it. Told her I have her pizza. She told me to put the 2 pizzas on the small counter while she gets change. It was like a small table counter where you can put your keys when you walk in the house. I thought to myself, it's only 3 feet away, max. Plus the door's wide open. So as I came in, I put the 2 large pizzas on the counter. As I put the pizza on the counter, I saw the lady looking in her purse for change. Nothing to it. As I watch her get money, suddenly the door slams behind me. A child, maybe around 2 or 3 years old, was in front of the door. All I remember, the back of my hair stood up as this little boy was looking at me with an eye patch. I can remember my hair standing up, but my butt cheek was tightening, like pulsing. Then touched my shoulder and said he had pink eye. Okay! Pat the kid on the head and left. As I was leaving, my car scraped the sidewalk, but I got a $6 tip. Story 27. I used to deliver to a guy's house. Nice place, a wall of 20+ foot trees to hide the house, 2 Mercedes in the driveway, always a good tipper. His house got raided by the feds and they took all his stuff, plus pounds of weed. Somehow he continued to order like clockwork every week. No idea how he didn't go to jail. Weird side note, this guy would always answer the door stinking like weed even after the arrest. And he has these weird female mannequins with designer clothes on them all over the house. Like when you pull up, it looks like he's having a party, but it's actually Home Alone deja vu and there's weird mannequins everywhere. Other than that, just your typical rednecks. House is full of trash, people clearly on some heavy stuff, and people coming to the door half naked. It all happens in the daily grind of a delivery driver. But those mannequins stuck out to me, and I'll never forget that weird dude. Story 28. I delivered pizza during 10 years of college. Not a doctor. This might be too late to the party, but whatever. Here are a couple. I delivered 4 large pizzas to an apartment complex. The person that ordered gave us the door code so we could just enter the building. I'd never delivered to this address before, so I just walked up to the door and knocked, as per usual. I just heard a muffled voice from inside the apartment say, "Come in, door's unlocked." Normally I would never go into someone's house, but it sounded like an old lady, so I entered. What I found inside was equal parts shocking and sad. The woman was lying back in a recliner in the living room. It looked as though her body had fused with the fabric due to not moving for days at a time. If it wasn't apparent to me by the piles of empty soda bottles, takeout containers, and pizza boxes that this woman was probably unable to get out of her recliner, and the acrid smell that hit your face as you entered would have made it obvious. She had me place the boxes of pizza on the armrest of the recliner. She also said that she had never seen me before, and it was usually one of the other drivers that delivered her food. I was new to that store, so I had no idea what to expect there. She signed the card receipt, and before I left, I asked if there was anything else I could do to help, and she said that she dropped her phone after she made the call and asked if I could get it for her. I picked it up out of some nearby trash and gave it to her. As I left, I understood why she gave us her door code, because there was no way she was getting up to buzz me in. Here's another one that I still remember 10 plus years later. There was an elderly woman that ordered 4 medium pizzas and 5 or 6 2-liters of Pepsi every Friday. All the drivers fought over her order because she always tipped $5 to $10 and it was super close to the store. She wasn't overweight or anything, so best we figured is she was old and just didn't want to lug all that soda home from the store. It was fairly common for elderly folks to order a bunch of pizza at once and just eat it over a few days. One day I show up with all the food and she had a distressed look on her face. She said, "I hate to trouble you, but can you come in for a second?" As I mentioned before, we weren't really supposed to go into people's homes, but she was familiar and super old. She continued, "My husband, he's on the floor." Holy crap, I didn't even know her husband was alive. I'd never seen him before, and I delivered there like 10 to 15 times. My heart instantly started racing. F me. I am going to see a dead body right now. What the F? I say, "Okay, sure," and I walk inside. Just to the left of the entryway, there was an elderly man slumped over in the front of an automatic lifting recliner. She proceeds to say, "My husband slipped out of his chair trying to get up and fell onto the floor. Can you help him back up into the chair?" At that moment, I saw him sort of shift, so I knew he wasn't dead. A wave of relief washed over me. But at the same time, I was thinking to myself how the heck I would get this guy back into his chair. I could tell he was a stout guy at one point, but is withered due to age. I sort of squatted down and pushed his back forward so I could get behind him. I put my arms under his armpits and joined my hands at his chest. The sounds. Gosh dang it. As I began to lift, he just started gasping and wheezing, and it sounded like I was literally squeezing the soul out of his body. I hesitated at first for fear of injuring him, but realized there was no way I was going to lift him any other way, so I just heaved and got him back up into his chair. I asked the man if he was okay, and he just looked at me. The woman paid and tipped me $15, and I was headed for the door. As I was about to exit, the old man said, "Whoever said these are your golden years is full of crap." That was literally the only thing the guy said. I sat in my car for a minute, just sort of bewildered at what just happened. I felt so bad and was still concerned. I had their phone number from the receipt and called them on my way back to the store to ask the woman if he would be okay and if I needed to call an ambulance. She said, "Oh no, honey, he will be all right." And that was that. Those were probably the most memorable, but delivering pizza in a college town got kinda crazy with the hijinks. Once, I auctioned off someone else's pizza to a crowd of drunks at a bar close outside the apartment complex I was delivering to. I just told my manager the person came up and said they ordered it. I paid for the pizza and just pocketed the other $30. We just re-delivered another pizza to the correct guy. I only ever got nude woman a couple times. One fully nude and one flasher. A cougar did invite me into her apartment once with some crappy R&B playing in the background. I declined. I'd get tipped with joints and blunts fairly regularly, all of which you would expect in a college town. Story 29. A hoarder's house. She was old and bedridden. After the event, I kept eyeing the place as it was a common route to various streets. There is a husband who is mobile, albeit fat. Their house was awful and it wasn't even as much trash as usual. Free flying pet bird. Every bird crap on the ground had a thick ring of roaches around it. Angry, decrepit ankle biter dog as well, and the stench of urine and visible dog turds. Disgusting. Not too long after, I had a different delivery. Forgot it was the camper behind the house and went up onto the house porch. Roaches all over. What the heck is wrong with these nasty butt people? You bought a camper but not an exterminator? Why is y'all's house so gross? Also had these regulars who had a toddler/young kid. 4-ish, I believe. Just about every time they ordered, several times a week, I was lined up to deliver and that boy would be naked and escaping his bath. Every single time nearly. I am a bit prudish and I do not want to see naked children. I don't even think that qualifies as being prudish. I think you and we are all well within our rights to not want to see that. Story 30. Domino's delivery driver here. Had to fight a robber off 10 minutes ago. Just another day on the life on the south side. Mind you, he tried to rob me after giving me his full name as well as his Facebook, idiot. Weirdest house I delivered to was completely dark. In a haunting, I think this is my last day on earth type of way. I knock on the door and a shirtless guy opens up. After greeting him, he looks me up and down and asks, "Do you want to come inside?" Immediately I respond, "I'm good." He then replies with, "You sure? My wife is on the bed. You wanna F her?" Nope. Most effed up place? The nursing homes. There are crappy places I deliver for sure, but nothing compares to the terrible nursing homes that feel like death's waiting room. Story 31. I've got a few good ones from my time spent serving our lovely streets in America delivering. Let's see here. One of my first deliveries, I had to deliver to a bunch of brand new apartment complexes. Super nice, super expensive. Took me forever to find because they had yet to be marked properly. Finally found it after like 20 minutes and super loud music playing and whatnot. Sounds like an absolute banger at 2 p.m. Knock on the door and the guy answers. Really nice and asked me how much I wanted for my tip. And I was like, man, I don't think I can say how much I want, and proceeds to try and give me $40 worth of weed. I told him I would if I could, but I just started and didn't want to get in trouble. So he gives me $50 in cash instead on around $12 worth of pizza. I was pretty happy. Delivered to a crappy hotel the next exit up, and the hooker with massive melons answers and tipped me $12 in all ones. She must have liked me because she asked for me a few times. My first time ever in a strip club was because of my delivery job. Seen it was for the strip club, so I was like, okay, they'll be outside. I get there and walk up to the door and nobody is waiting. The bouncer opens the door and says, "It's cold, man. Come on in." So I gladly did. I walk in and a cute Hispanic girl giving a lap dance sees me with a pizza and just hops off this dude and comes over, pulls a wad of cash out of her bikini top, counts out exact change, and then $10 in ones. Told me she knows how it is living off tips, and that's easier for her because there's more horny people than hungry people. I delivered there multiple times afterwards and always made good tips. Delivered to a massive frat party right outside campus one day. They were actually pretty cool and tried to get me to pledge to them. I declined and explained I work full-time and I take 18 hours of classes. So they just tipped me a beer and a few bucks. This one happened to a friend of mine that also delivered at the store I worked at. So we have people calling outside the delivery range all the time. We leave it up to drivers if it's not too far, but if they don't say anything about a tip, then we usually declined. Well, this dude, obviously drunk, calls us wanting to order like $100 of pizza and drinks and crap, but lives like an hour-ish away. It was pretty late, but he told us he'd give us a $50 tip to whoever delivered. So we drew straws and away my friend went. He gets there and is a huge house having a big party. The people obviously had money. Big driveway, nice cars, the whole deal. The guy comes out and tries to give him $50 for the tip, and his dad comes out and tells him it's rude, and he drove a long way. He breaks out $200 bills and tells him to keep the $50. Buddy made $3.90 in tips that night. Story 32. Not pizza, but I deliver for FedEx in a secluded part of Montana. Get ready, this is a novel. During peak, FedEx drivers work absolutely ridiculous hours, usually 11 to 14 hours a day. It gets dark around 4 in the winter months. There was a particular house I'd never delivered to. This house was 11 miles off the main highway. I was driving a box truck, basically a 3-4 ton pickup with a 20-foot long box on the back and about 12 feet tall. It was around 8:30 p.m., so it had been dark for hours. I was used to being in secluded areas at such a late time, and this was my second to last stop. There also wasn't service in this particular area, so I'm cresting on a small hill up to this said house. I started to get a really weird feeling. This house was 3 miles from the next nearest subdivision in an area surrounded by sand buttes. I pulled up to the house, backed up to the garage, the automatic light kicked on, it was very bright and I couldn't see anything looking into this light. I continued on like any other stop, hopped in the back of my box truck, found the package, and just as I was going to close the door and hop out, I should add that there was a door to access the box part of the truck right behind the driver's seat, but it's been welded shut because usually I have too many packages to even open it, so I'm forced to exit the vehicle and walk around back to access the packages. I see a figure standing just below the automatic garage light. The package I had was very light and small. The figure wasn't there when I'd backed up and got out. The wind was blowing and the people had wind chimes on their porch. It was a noisy night. I said, "Hey there," like I do to anyone. No reply. At this point, I'm exiting the vehicle and getting ready to hand the package to this figure, who at this point is no more than 12 feet away. As I turned around from closing and latching my cargo door, the figure was distinguishable as a middle-aged man with a long gray beard and tattoos on his face. Very scary looking individual. The guy never said a dang word to me. He grabbed the package from me with a straight face, flexing his jaw. I uneasily said, Have a good night, man." I turned and walked to the driver door. I always made sure to prepare my vehicle to exit the property because sometimes there are mean dogs and I haul out. As I got in my vehicle, I can still hear the wind chimes and the tree leaves rustling. I looked back in my mirror after closing my door and locking it. The automatic light turned off and the guy slowly disappeared into the darkness off the alley between his house and the garage. There were no lights other than a red heat lamp and what appeared to be a chicken coop. I swear to you, I've never felt so uneasy. This man was evil. I could just feel it. I couldn't find anything on the guy the next day at the hub. There wasn't even a name on the package, only the address. I've never delivered there since. And I know it might not sound that scary, but after that I refused to go out of neighborhoods and subdivisions after dark. Story 33. Oh yay, finally something I can talk about. Female driver here. We delivered until 3 a.m. in my college town. Had a delivery driver off campus in the part of the neighborhood that didn't have many streetlights. It was about 2 a.m. I get to the door and it's answered by these two huge guys. I hand them the receipt and ask them to sign it. While one guy is signing, the other is creepily hitting on me, telling me my smile is cute, wasn't smiling, that I looked hot, asking me for my number. I said no to giving out my number and he said, that's alright, I know where you work. I'm super creeped out, but I deal because I need this freaking receipt. He asks if I'm single. I said, I'm sorry, I'm taken. The other guy, still signing the receipt, is like, man, I don't give two F's if you got a boyfriend or not. He then is holding my receipt hostage and they both step out of the doorway and start looking up and down the street for people that might be around. Thank God. There was a group of 3 people slightly down the street. It was seriously giving me the effing creeps and I was so sure I was about to get nabbed and essayed that I sprinted to my car and took off. They started chasing me, but I caught them off guard and the head start was enough. I never delivered there again. I still remember that address to this day, although I don't deliver or even live in that town anymore. Whew. Some of these like on the brink of life and death. So glad they're here to tell the story. Story 34. This one is pretty dark. I got a call at lunch for a delivery. We only would have one driver in the afternoon, where a lady wanted to surprise a family whose kid just died by ordering them pizza for lunch. She made sure we included a note, who it was from, saying she's sorry for their loss. I triple-checked everything she wanted since this was such an odd request. Once the food was ready, I took the pizzas to this house and saw an open door where the family was clearly in mourning, sitting quietly. I knocked and as quickly as I could gave them the pizzas, explaining someone got them as a gift, leaving a note in the pizza box and left. I still feel so awkward about that delivery today. Story 35. I know it's not the most effed up place like you're asking for, but my buddy delivered pizza in Boulder for a while. He would be furious about how many kids offered him drugs for pizza or as a tip. Mind you, he would be hitting a joint screaming at us about all the idiots that thought inviting him in for a toke counted as a tip. Give me the effing money and let me get back to my job. A gratuity toke is great and all, but some college students like drugs, but also like having a job and getting money. If you think smoking up the pizza guy gets you free pizza, you're just being an idiot. I mean, if it's your friends bringing you old pizza and getting high before the next hour of dealing with idiots, that's one thing. But pay your delivery people. Don't act like it's all chill, brah, smoking them up for the pizza. Story 36. When I was in college, I delivered pizza, and I once stopped at a delivery and noticed that the neighbor's house was about to be on fire. I say about because the fence attached to the house was in flames, and it was up against the house. The flames were licking the eaves. I ran up to the front door and rang the doorbell, knocked, yelled, nothing. I called the fire department. Then I ran to the house next door, pulled off their hose, ran to the other side of the house on fire, attached it, and started spraying the fire. I had most of it out when the fire department arrived and they finished the job. As they were spraying it down, a 20-year-old girl comes out of the house with two 13 to 14-year-old girls. Apparently, the 20-year-old was babysitting the younger ones and was scared to open the door. Earlier that night, the two younger girls had broken up with their boyfriends and, with the babysitter's help, set fire to pictures of their ex-boyfriends and threw them in the trash can outside. The trash can just happened to be up against the wood fence that was up against the house. I delivered the pizza next door and went on with my shift. A week later, their parents stopped by the store looking for me and gave me a $50 gift card to a local mall to say thank you for saving their kids from a fiery inferno of death. The babysitter got fired. Ha! What a freaking hero! Story 37. Not really effed up, but I delivered to a house and a nice middle-aged woman answered the door. I handed her the pizza and she told me to hang on a second so she could get cash for the tip. I waited by the door and this boy came into view down the hallway. He was probably like 14 to 17 years old, completely naked and staring at me. I didn't really know what was going on, but as it all kind of started making sense, like, oh, that's a naked teen. What? He was just kind of standing there, staring, and then he kind of started adjusting himself. His mom came back and realized what was happening. At that point, I kind of just shot my eyes down to the floor and she told him to go to his room. She apologized to me and quickly explained that he was autistic and that he was supposed to be getting ready for a bath. Story 38. I used to drive for Papa John's. I have several stories. So one day I ended up with this delivery on the evening shift, and it was after the dinner rush as far as I can recall. So things were quieter and not as many people were out and about or on the roads. The customer lived kind of deep in this rundown neighborhood full of single-story houses, and when I arrived, literally every single light on the house was off. I walked up to the door, figuring that I might as well ring the bell since they ordered it. After all, maybe they were waiting on it anyway, right? Ring, nothing. I waited a bit, ring, nothing. At this point, I figure they aren't there or asleep, so I walk away from the door and was about to call my boss to relay that I might have to bring the pizza back, when almost silently the front door opens up. It's literally so dark inside, it's like a scene from a horror movie where you can't see anything at all. Two pale, stringy-looking guys come out of the darkness without saying much of anything and pay me in cash for the pizza, then take it and quietly move back into the dark without ever turning on the lights. I left pretty quickly as it freaked me out. Was I in any danger? I doubt it, but those guys were really creepy. Another time I had to deliver to this really crappy rundown extended stay motel that I always hated going to because it was literally the most dangerous place we delivered to. It was very late, around 10 p.m. or 12 a.m. I got out of my car, got the pizza from the trunk, and as I began to walk across the parking lot to the guy's room, I see that down at the far end of the parking lot are a very large crowd of people. From what I could tell, they looked like a gang or just a lot of rough people hanging around. I became nervous. After I gave this guy his pizza, I took my empty pizza bag and was walking back when I looked left and they were all, keep in mind this was a crowd of 30 or so people, walking toward my direction. Not a single one of them was walking anywhere else. I very quickly cranked the car and got out of there before I had a chance to figure out what was going on or if they were coming for me specifically. Finally, I delivered to this old guy in the same rundown neighborhood as the first story. I'd had his house before, I believe, and his deranged-looking son was the one who usually answered. But this time I got Pops, and I'll never forget it. He opened the door shirtless, and I was immediately greeted with what looked like a surgical scar. Not too bad, right? It was infested with what looked like warts or skin growths. I don't mean a few either. It was absolutely covered in them, to such a point where I can't think about it without getting sick. They were pale looking, but the color is rolled snot. It reminded me of the way sea life latches onto other creatures and grows. It was pretty scarring. He paid in cash and I left as quickly as I could. I remember immediately hitting the hand sanitizer in my car and practically bathing in it. Other than those, we had a few weirdos, but nothing too serious. There was a guy we delivered whose nickname was Captain Underpants because he always answered the door in his underwear. Gross, but nothing that would mess you up. It was an interesting job. Edit. Remembered another one. So we had this massive, sprawling apartment complex that we often had to deliver to, and all the drivers hated it. It had multiple apartment buildings with the same numbers, so it was awful to navigate through, but otherwise new and rather nice. One day I got this delivery to a guy way in the back of the complex, who we'll call Mr. White. I make my way back there, and as I climb up the stairs, I hear this muffled sound coming from his room. I knock, and Mr. White opens the door, looking like Mr. Rogers. He had a sweater and everything, but as he's paying for the pizza, I keep hearing muffled gag sounds like female screaming coming from inside his apartment. It did not sound like a TV. It sounded like a person, but this guy just kept on smiling as he paid, acting like nothing was wrong and not even trying to explain it away as the TV or anything. The dude was chill as ice. He finished paying and took the pizza, and I walked back down, kind of wigging out over what I just heard. I couldn't be sure it was someone, but I hated to do nothing, and someone died because of it. I called my boss on the way back, and he advised I call the police immediately, so I did. They took my name, but I never heard anything about what happened or if the guy was actually doing anything to someone in there. But regardless, it freaked me out. Either I called the cops on an innocent customer, or I saved someone from a psychopath. I still think about that night to this day. I can't be the only one that heard, Mr. White! But, yeah, that's very spooky and very terrifying. I mean, this guy had a lot of stories. Or near-death experiences, I should say. Thank your guardian angel, man, alright? Because they've been working overtime. I live in a backwoods area of the Pacific Northwest. My friend who took this call tells me the lady sounded weird. Getting to this house is going through a maze of dense forest and dirt roads. As I get to the house, I see it's got 15-foot fence topped with barbed wire. I ring a buzzer, get let in, and am greeted by a tall, bald dude wearing black sweatpants and a black hoodie. He opens the door wide. I see 15 to 20 people all wearing gray or black sweatpants and hoodies, sitting in front of a TV screen facing away from me. Guy tells me he's going to get another. Old lady comes and pays me. I got back in my rig with a $20 tip. That was my run-in with a cult. Story 40. I delivered in college, and in this town there was a huge complex of different prisons and mental hospitals. I think the hospitals have since closed, but holy crap, it was so depressing going in them as people are moaning, screaming for no apparent reason, and it smells like excrement. And then there's the prison I had to go to sometimes, but I had to buzz my way in this double fence gate across a yard from the prison building with cell windows facing me. I had an entire 3 to 4 story wall of prisoners yelling at me to scare the crap out of me. Even though I knew they were locked up, I was a kid pretty much, and their tactics absolutely worked. I also almost got shot by a guard there who didn't believe I was there to deliver and thought I was trying to help someone escape. Especially the prison stuff sounds to me today like it was probably bullcrap. They should at least come out of the prison to get the pizza. But yeah, I promise, I'm not lying about the early 2000s. Crappy Georgia prison security. Story 41. I used to deliver pizzas, but I also delivered appliances. The worst delivery that I've ever had was a refrigerator to a rental. The delivery of the new fridge went well, and the rental was a decent place in the country. When we were done, the customer says, "Okay, time for the next part. Moving this old fridge to my place." Me and my coworker were both puzzled by this, as this wasn't in our instructions or on the bill. A call to the salesman confirmed that it was agreed that we would do this. So we followed her to her place, which was about 5 miles away. When we get there, we see a farmhouse and a trailer house surrounded by chain link fence. Inside the fence was about 10 dogs of various sizes and breeds roaming and barking. The customer then tells us that the old fridge will be going into her cat house, meaning the trailer. We head on over to the trailer while being followed by her barking and yipping dog pack and got into the cat house. I can still remember opening that door and being greeted by the sight and stench of well over 20 cats that inhabited that trailer house. There was pee and crap everywhere, on the floor, on the counters, on the fridge, on the ceiling, everywhere. In order to get the fridge into the house, we had to remove the door from the house as well as from the fridge. While moving it inside, the customer was spraying wasp spray all around to keep the yellow jackets at bay. We got everything sipped out and got the frick out as fast as a delivery truck could go. F that place. Story 42. There's 2 that come to mind. I've worked at this one place on 2 separate occasions. once over a year ago for a few months, and currently. The first one happened a year ago and is the reason I didn't finish out my 2 weeks, which thankfully they were cool about. It was a delivery to a trailer park super far out, at the edge of our delivery range. Middle of nowhere, a bit run down, the trailer in question is a mess. There are dirty toys strewn all about over the lawn and a bunch of cats. I knock on the door. They yell, "Who is it?" And I yell back, "It's their pizza." A guy opens the door, no shirt, huge beer belly and basketball shorts hanging halfway down his butt. There are 2 naked little girls crawling on the floor. I give him the receipt and he goes in to sign it on the table. His wife calls out if she needs to sign it, but the guy says no because she's naked. While I'm there, the little girls are smiling and waving at me. There's a wall next to the door and a light fixture is pulled halfway out of the wall, exposing the wires. All of a sudden, dozens of little cockroaches start pouring out of it. The guy comes back and hands me the receipt, but not my pen. And I didn't ask for it back. The second one felt worse though. I delivered to a house that's actually right behind where I live, facing the next street over. I'd never looked at it before. I get there, middle of the night. There's a bunch of junk on his porch and the windows are boarded up. Looks abandoned, but there's a light on outside with a note on the ticket saying to knock loud. I always feel awkward opening up screen doors, so I tend to knock on the screen door. I tried that and figured there was no way he'd hear it. So after a minute, I opened it and knocked on the door, which slowly swung open. Then there's this little lone bulb shining dimly through a doorway at the far end. All I can see of the living room is this tiny little walking path between a couple-inch high mound of pure trash on either side. House was absolutely quiet. No one walking around, watching TV, not even the sound of breathing. I legitimately felt like I was about to be murdered. I ended up leaving and he never called to get the pizza delivered. I was talking to another driver who mentioned delivering there and he said there was something not right about that guy and that it was probably a good thing he didn't answer the door. I should mention I'm a young female. I also found out he's a registered offender. Edit. Oh, and third place goes to the house where that was something domestic going down with the guy screaming how he'd burn the house down with everyone in it. That was fun. Story 43. When I was in college back in North Florida, I worked for a local pizza joint that was the only one open until 3 a.m., which meant I witnessed quite a few odd events over my time there, from a woman flashing the older driver for free pizza to 2 homeless guys fighting in the parking lot out front. The best, though, had to be one late evening when I got a delivery to the outskirts of town way out in the boondocks. You can imagine how backwater the outskirts of town in North Florida can be, but I never would have expected what I would come upon. I arrived at the house at about 1:30 a.m. with directions to drive the car up the drive and around back. And as I did, I saw what appeared to be 8 shirtless grown men covered head to toe in mud, dancing around a massive bonfire next to a giant 4x8 plank of plywood with giant red letters painted on it that read, "Mud Boys." I instantly thought of peeling out of there, but before I could react, the group saw me and immediately rushed the vehicle. Now imagine 8 grown countrymen covered in mud charging your car at 2 a.m. with flaming inferno behind them. I nearly crapped myself. As I cracked the window, the guys were actually quite cheery. Hammered, but cheery. They were so excited for pizza that I'm not even certain they remember tipping me $20 or the 3 beers they threw in the back of my car. But to this day, I will never forget the Mud Boys. Story 44. Not pizza, but DoorDash. Delivered an order from Denny's. Honestly, who wants Denny's when hundreds of other dinner options are available? Drove around the complex for about 10 minutes trying to find their building because people in the apartment complexes don't give directions. Finally made it to the 3rd floor, knocked on the door, and when the door swung open, there stood a super skinny naked man with a full-on erection. He calmly thanks me for his order, and from behind him a large, overweight, naked woman comes from the darkened room, eyes me up and down, proclaiming, "My sexy savior man for my dinner." She yanks the food from my hands, winks, and asks if I want to share and eat her food off her big O breasts. My eyes were practically exploding from my head at this point from shock. I politely declined and ran the F down the stairs back to my car at full tilt. Weird freaking night. Oh, that's gross. They asked you for a tip. Story 45. One time I had to deliver to a farm, and when I got out of my car, a turkey approached me, and turkeys have sharp talons. So F that crap. I got back in my car and called the customer. They said it was their pet and was harmless. I got back out of my car to deliver the pizza, and this effing bird followed me all the way to the house, gobbling and nibbling my jeans. Ended up being fine though. The customers were super nice and tipped me like 40%, and the turkey didn't hurt me or rip my jeans from nibbling too hard, so Story 46. I used to live in the South, an urban area though, and I once delivered to a more rural area. It was off the main road, into the woods on a mostly dirt path. Turned out to not even be a house, but rather a small shack cobbled together by God knows what. It looked to be sheets of metal and other stuff. House and the 3 to 4 trucks surrounding it were plastered with Confederate flags, and the beer-bellied redneck tipped me in quarters. Edit. A funnier story. I once delivered to a large house, knocked several times to no answer despite hearing 2 individuals loudly and poorly banging on a piano and singing right by the door. They didn't answer for close to 5 minutes, but it was my last delivery for the night and I was patient. Finally, the drunkest teenager I've ever seen in my life opened and hobbled out of the front door. They hadn't heard me over the piano despite, as I saw, the fact that it was about 5 feet from the door I was knocking hard on. He needed my help filling out the receipt and allowed me to write in my own tip. Story 47. A little old strip club in Boulder, Colorado. It was named the Bus Stop. Maybe because of its proximity to a bus stop? I'll never know. Anyway, this strip club was in North Boulder, and for those not in the know, Boulder is a college town, and the farther north you go, the farther you get away from the college campus, and thus the weirder the town gets. Boulder is known as a liberal white haven, so imagine the clientele a strip club in the weird part of town. Now at the time I didn't work for a pizza delivery place per se, but rather a now closed calzone delivery place. Our food wasn't particularly bad, but was definitely a late night. I'm drunk and need greasy, fatty, dairy, heavy food type place. These strippers would order meatball calzones, supreme calzones, 3 meat calzones. What I'm getting at is this is not food you want in your system when you're stripping. Every time I delivered food there, I died a little inside, imagining some poor, unsuspecting strip club patron getting the old brown eye in his face and getting a little more than they expected. Again, it was weird clientele. So maybe it wasn't unwanted, and us delivery drivers would fight over who got to deliver there because A, you got a face full of the chest every time you would go in, and B, you could sometimes get a lap dance on the house. C, they hadn't had any food, so they weren't, gassy yet. D, they tipped well, albeit dirty money. At any rate, the weirdest plate I delivered with any consistency. I miss college. Story 48. Mom used to deliver pizzas. She told me a story about how she had gotten a large order for a construction site late at night. Order was like $250. It was late at night and dark, cash on delivery order. She gets to the place, can hardly see. A foreman comes out to pay her. He counts 15 bills and hands it over. She thought it was 20s. Gets in her car, drives back to the store. When she gets to the store, she sees that he just paid her $1,500. The store called the customer and asked him if he was sure he wanted to pay $1,500. He didn't answer. My mom said she'd go back and see if they are still there. She gets there, finds the foreman and asks if he intended on giving her $1,500. He says, absolutely not. She hands him the $1,500 back. He hands her $600, a $350 tip. My mom tried to refuse, and he said, I honestly gave you $1,500 by mistake. You could have kept it. And that's how my mom got her largest tip, $350. Story 49. I almost got robbed. Every spidey sense in me was screaming. Out-of-area delivery to a Motel 6, scantily clad lady. Now let me set this up for you and explain why all my senses were on high alert to get the F out. Normal 2-bed hotel room. Entry foyer with a closet left and a bathroom right, then main room. All the lights were out, and the room was blacked out. This really got my juices going. I mean, they went all in. One light over a chair in the foyer room blacked out. Windows all sealed up. Even the alarm clock was covered or unplugged. You can normally see the red or green glow of the typical alarm clocks. Someone went to great lengths to black that room. I could hear breathing initially. It was not the little woman I was looking at in her bra and panties. Thought it was my imagination, but I had a source. Other side of wall of bathroom, and the blackout really set it off. She asked if I could put the pizza on the chair. I instantly noped on that. I lied and said, I am armed. You can pay me and take this pizza, or I can shoot the guy you have standing on the other side of that wall ready to jump me. Gamble. She paid. I left as fast as I could. I alerted the front desk, though I doubt they did anything. Told boss I am never going to that effing place again. I have a really good idea of what Parker feels when his spidey sense tingles. Crap, every gosh dang nerve in my body was tingling. That was the first and thankfully only time I've ever actually been in fear of my life or safety, and it is something I do not want to repeat. I'm just glad my instincts caught it. Never had a situation like that before, so no way to know how I might react. I think I reacted appropriately. There is no question whatsoever in my mind there was someone standing behind that wall ready to pounce on my butt. I am 6'4" and built like a brick crap house, but that don't mean crap if someone snicks you on the back of the head with a club or bat or gun. I will slump dead or unconscious to the ground like anyone else would. Story 50. Other than delivering to various trap houses, I have 2 deliveries that effed with me. The first was when I was fresh out of high school working at Domino's. I took a delivery to the crappy part of town where the dens were. I knock on the door, it unlatched and swung open, and almost instantly have a huge dog with its paws on my shoulders barking in my face. I'm 6'4" and I was effing shook. The guy rushes out, clearly on something, and says, "Just be glad it's princess, not king." My stupid idiot self asks why, and he says, "You'd probably get your throat ripped out, and I ain't calling 911 here." I got back to the store and blacklisted the number immediately. The second wasn't as scary, but was way more crazy. The city I was delivering in has a clinic/hospital that specializes in kidneys. They mostly just run dialysis for people, but occasionally they do a transplant. I walk in and start heading to reception. I delivered there pretty frequently, so I knew the receptionist decently well, and notice it's super effing busy. She tells me that I'm going to have to wait for a bit because the person who ordered was busy with part of the kidney intake process. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, so I just stood off to the side for a bit. People are rushing around, getting everything prepped and such. I pull out my phone, and after a second, I hear a clatter on the ground and then silence. I look up to see that the guy handling the kidney had tripped, the organ cooler had popped open, and there was a kidney just sitting on the floor. There was a very long couple of seconds of just stunned silence, and then they started to clean up. I got the payment and got the F out. I really hope they were able to still use that kidney, but my gut says someone probably died because of it. Oh my gosh, that's horrible and disgusting, and do they do discounts on kidneys? Jeez. Story 51. God, there's been a few, but I gotta say, it's this one. I had to go all the way to the edge of our range to this backwoods-looking place after dark. After finding the house, I drive up and get my stuff. Not only is there a dog running around, if I remember correctly, non-aggressive, but we usually don't like people leaving their dogs out when we're coming. But something seemed off. I think it was a few trailers put together and the yard looked like a car junkyard. I go up to the door and knock. Hand this guy his food. He doesn't seem bad. No, it's when I turn around, I wanted to leave because another guy had appeared out of the darkness behind me without a freaking sound. I booked it out of there. I've been to some houses where you can smell the drugs and stuff, but for some reason this one stuck with me. I think it's because something just felt off. Like if I stayed there any longer, I would have been mugged or something.